Welcome to Questions from the Crowd. I'd like to introduce everyone to David Waring, founder and director of one of my favourite apps, GetReminded, who are undertaking a crowdfunding campaign via on market. Welcome, David.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Very well. Listen, you've got one of the more exciting apps we've seen, and I know that on market audiences love this type of technology. Can you give us a brief introduction to GetReminded?
Sure. So GetReminded, if anybody's had the chance to already have a look at it, is a free app in both the app stores. And it says what it is on the box. So GetReminded is an app that allows consumers to be able to manage the expiry dates of important stuff. So whether that be an insurance policy or a mobile phone contract or an energy contract, what we do is allow consumers to be able to set up and get lots of reminders so as they can get the best options for themselves when those things expire.
Okay, so at On Market, we love a good story,
Yeah.
and we find a lot of early stage companies have a good story. Is there sort of a story behind the inspiration of how this came about?
Sure, there is. So I was actually working overseas in Asia for 10 years, and I came back 5 years ago. And one of the first things that struck me with my retired parents was that they had been overpaying on wholesale rate for their energy contract for over 10 years on two houses. Now, I worked that out to be an overpay of over $16,000, which was
Wow.
just a giant amount of money.
Mm.
So I looked into it more to understand how contracts work in the energy space and realized that the customer has to do their own customer service. And if you don't recontract every year, A, the energy company won't remind you. And secondly, you will revert to the wholesale rate until you bother to actually pick up the phone and recontract. And we just thought there has to be a better way than this. And the more that we looked into whether it's insurance or whether it's telecommunication or pretty much anything, we realized that existing customers just pay a loyalty tax for everything.
And what are the main sort of contracts or things that people are using GetReminded for?
Well, we have a really broad spectrum of reminders that our users are already using. And we have over 210,000 reminders that we're currently managing in GetReminded across all of our users. And we tend to find that they sit across all of those really important things that we wouldn't necessarily just describe as monthly bills. These are things that you have to make a decision on, whether it be every year or every 2 years.
Mm.
So we find they're in the finance space, they're in the insurance space, telecommunications, energy, but we also find that people set reminders for simple things like birthdays and anniversaries, and even when the best drinking time is for a bottle of wine.
Mm. Interesting. How big, in your analysis, how big is the total addressable market in Australia then globally?
Well, I think that it's probably best to look at this in terms of historically how similar utility style apps to ourselves have had penetration in certain markets.
Sure.
And what we would say is that across the vast majority of utility style apps, their penetration should be estimated at somewhere between 2.5% and 3% of the adult market. Now, given the fact that we would describe any GetReminded potential user as somebody who is an adult who has to pay bills and potentially needs some kind of financial help of some description, we estimate that obviously in Australia at around 15 million potential customers,
Wow.
of which at 2.5% to 3%, we would have thought that saturation or an expectation of penetration for in Australia would be 400,000 to 500,000 users.
Okay. You mentioned that on the App Store it's free. One of the questions we had from the crowd on the On Market website was in and around your revenue model. Given
Sure.
it's free for obviously the user from the App Store, which is fantastic, and we'll talk about your traction in a moment. But how are you making money? How do you propose to make money? How are you making money? Take us through that for a moment.
Sure. So at a pure utility level for consumers, we appear to be a reminder app. So there are lots of substitutes for that in the marketplace, whether or not somebody uses a paper diary or they use Outlook or whatever it might be. And most of those systems obviously work from a reminder point of view, although most of them don't provide what you would call multiple reminders. But of course, as a marketer, I would say to you that if I know what you want and when it's expiring, then I have the best aperture to be able to influence your decision of how you then repurchase. So our revenue model is obviously based around the influencing model to advertising partners that are related to that reminder. So we have built, as a part of our technology, an advertising serving system that targets specific provider ads at a specific time that we know a consumer needs to be reminded. And we're influencing those decisions instead of, take, for example, an insurance policy where you'll receive a paper renewal 30 days prior to expiry. We commence that recontracting influencing at least 60 days prior, and we do it on multiple occasions in the lead into the expiry date.
You use the sort of slogan, the right information at the right time. So knowing the expiry date, that obviously that information comes through at the right time. So I know personally, you sort of ignore everything for the first 10 months, and then in the last 2 months prior to your contract coming up, that's when you really do pay attention. So that's very clever.
Yeah, and if I can add into that, Tim, that the vast majority of providers in this space, whether it be in any of the categories that we were talking about before, they write the rules for themselves to ensure that they make it pretty hard for you to actually have the time to change.
Sure.
And that's why it's called a loyalty tax. So indeed, by having the expiry date and the known purchase date, and we actually call it a purchase intent date, we therefore give ourselves the best chance to be able to influence consumer behavior.
Talk to me about your traction, number of users in Australia, how long you've been around, and then potentially leading into your scalability and your expansion into overseas markets.
Sure. So we currently have over 50,000 users using the app. The vast majority of them are in the Australian market because this is obviously where we launched it.
Yeah.
So we have 44,000 users in Australia, and the remainder are in the markets of the United Kingdom, the United States, and New Zealand, where we're soft launched at the moment. But we do have organic growth in those markets without investment in scaled marketing at this stage. That traction has obviously occurred for us over the last 18 to 24 months. And because we placed a level of investment over that period to understand what our customer acquisition cost was. So we have a very firm grip on what it costs for us to acquire a customer. And so as a result, with the investment that we're seeking in this raise, we're able to therefore match up what our expectations are of acquisition of customers following the raise.
And the attributes of GetReminded here in Australia, what we appreciate, is that similar in the UK and over in the US?
Yeah, I think these are very, very similar markets, and our research has actually shown us that in all of the key commercial categories for ourselves, the buying habits are identical in each of those developed markets. However, it's important to say that we certainly don't limit the opportunity for GetReminded, because even in a market hypothetically like India, which has over 1 billion people, whilst the revenue expectations per user would be lower, the adoption for items such as a mobile phone contract or even insurance policy is actually very similar in a developed country, just as it is in a developed country like Australia.
I was interested in one of the statistics that we spoke about, and it's in your offer document as well. The average household who is on GetReminded gets 7 to 10 reminder emails per year. And obviously that's a great opportunity for the advertisers to be in front of that audience. Can you elaborate a bit further on that statistic?
Well, actually, it's a little more refined than that. So we provide 5 reminders per expiry date or per purchase intent date. So, and our average number of reminders, which is set per user, currently sits at 5.3.
Okay.
So actually, we have 30 opportunities to be able to communicate with a consumer. Now, clearly, if we're able to successfully influence a consumer on, say, a car insurance policy, they'll be triggered by one of those communications. But we do give ourselves the best chance in each category to have multiple communications to be able to influence those subscribers' behavior.
Is there a similar app or competitor in the market to you guys that you know of?
from all the research that we've done, and even from a global point of view, whilst there are substitutes in part of what we do,
Yeah.
really that acting as a middle person or an influencer, bringing together the coincidence of the consumer's needs and the advertiser's needs at a specific time, we don't actually see a direct competitor.
Okay, now that's well explained. Couple more questions for you. Just in relation to your future plans and the capital that you're raising, if we can take us through how much you're looking to raise and where you want to spend those funds. Our investors are interested in knowing a bit more around that.
Sure. So clearly laid out in the document is that we seek scale in order to get to the end commercial success that we know GetReminded is actually worthy of. So even though we have 50,000 users right now, I would put a line in the sand to say that at 150 to 200,000 users, we start seeing really good commercial returns for the business. Okay. And that's primarily because the advertisers become not only interested or intrigued in what we do, but we become unavoidable for the advertisers because we simply hold purchase intent information. So in terms of the raise, we would overwhelmingly be using more than half the money towards customer acquisition and growth of the database. We still have a level of investment we want to maintain in technology enhancements, and we have a fantastic roadmap moving forward for even more enhancement and even more drivers around loyalty and repurchase loyalty as well.
Fantastic. Last one, management. Tell us a little about your team you've got there. Investors place a lot of faith, a lot of confidence in the management and your ability to scale. Run us through that if you can, please.
Sure. So GetReminded has 3 founders, and we all came together at a relatively similar period of time, and we've been together now for over 4 years. So I think if the first test of can we stand the test of time and can we actually stand to be in the room together for a protracted period of time, the answer would be yes. The 3 of us come from very different backgrounds, and whilst we loosely say we're all marketers, I come from a corporate marketing background, predominantly in the automotive industry, and have extensive experience in customer relationship management, engagement marketing, and the like for automotive companies. My second partner, Tim, comes from an advertising agency background. So he's actually used to the other side of the funnel, which is around deploying clients' resources for an outcome that's required. And our third partner, who I think is probably our luckiest find as a part of this entire process, is Celia. Now, Celia has a master's degree in user interaction from Sydney University, and everything that you see in GetReminded that's been designed and all of the customer experience processes has been designed by Celia. So she's the real product strength of our team.
Yeah, well, I can say to anyone watching, you can see in your background there the colours and the design of the app. It's probably one of the nicest UX user experience that we've had in terms of an app. So she's done a fantastic job. Yeah, in conclusion, Dave, 3 key points in relation to why an investor should invest in GetReminded.
Yeah, look, I think for me, the first key point is that we're moving into a very unusual world in the world of digital advertising, which is all related to a lot of topics that you see in the news today around what's called privacy and consent-based marketing. For those who are not aware, Google and Apple are driving a very large change in relation to cookies policies that come into play later this year. And as a result, the whole concept or the whole multi-billion-dollar market around cookies-based retargeted advertising essentially falls apart at the end of this year. Sure. So those companies that are able to extract what's called zero-party data, which is therefore opted-in data and consent-based data provided by consumers, hold a very, very powerful piece of information. And GetReminded is actually that. GetReminded doesn't work on the basis of programmatic advertising. It works on consent-based advertising. And that's a very disruptive model, but it's actually very timely and very appropriate given the changes in the marketplace that we have right now. I think the second one is that the digital marketing world is confusing, it's congested, and it's quite established, but it's enormous. So last year in Australia alone, over $11 billion was spent in digital advertising through all clients. And that's an audited number from the Advertising Board. So in reality, whilst it's always moving and it's always disruptive, it's actually quite an established market.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, the companies like Google that have owned search for 20 years, and companies like Facebook that have owned the social media environment for such a long period of time, no longer dominate the screen time of a consumer like they used to. Mm-hmm. And what I can say about our growth of GetReminded today is that a customer's needs changes very quickly. Getting their attention is the first thing that obviously needs to occur. But businesses like GetReminded come about out of necessity for consumers.
Yeah.
And given the fact that we're so used to Google searching for our outcomes right now, in many respects, there are companies in different spaces to ours that are looking to circumvent search in order to be able to directly give the consumers information that they need to take away the confusion. So for me, that they're environmentally two of the most important things. And I think that the third thing is that GetReminded is, I've used the word disruptive already, but GetReminded is a really fascinatingly exciting business model in that we've already proven that 50,000 people will adopt it. We already know how we can make it better. And I think that when we establish that the vast majority of providers in this space at the moment have effectively deferred their sales responsibility to aggregator sites like Compare the Market and Finder and CanStar, that to really change that paradigm and give back the consumer a direct relationship with the providers, I think that's what GetReminded sets out to do. And I think that we're already on a really good pathway to doing that.
Well said. Great summary. And thank you for joining us, and good luck with the campaign.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, David.